Hello and welcome to the first Sheffield and Hampshire County FA online coach workshop of the 23-24 season. This is a recording of our Creating the Right Environment for Your Players workshop. Enjoy. Hi everyone and welcome to the Sheffield and Hampshire County FA online coach support workshop, Creating the Right Environment for Your Players, that was originally recorded on Thursday the 7th of September. You may notice during this recording that I'll be changing clothes halfway through. That is due to some technical difficulties that we had on the first half of the workshop that I am now remedying now, so that the slides show and what I say makes hopefully total sense to you when you re-watch this. So we can skip through as we're no longer live. We'll set the scene still. So these online CPDs will be our monthly workshops. They're not a practical based session, as you can imagine, as they're online. We'll be focusing on the softer skills of coaching and thinking about adding tools to our coaching toolkit, as well as reaffirming some of the great skills and tools that you already have, and hopefully giving you a bit more insight into why those positive and good things that you do, why do they work when you're coaching. There'll be a wide variety of topics, so including tonight. Next up, we have how to coach as an effective team. Following that, we have tactics on a match day. And then following that, I believe we have the social corner. And there are 2 or 3 more penciled in between the after the 4th one and the end of the season, with a little break at Christmas. So who's who on the call tonight? You have myself, Tom Measham. I work for Sheffield and Hampshire County FA as a senior football development officer with a remit to support the people involved in football, and in particular, in this instance, you as coaches. As well as that, I used to be an FA affiliate tutor. I've coached professionally for nearly 15 years and still coach professionally now. Brent, who did introduce himself when we originally did this last night, currently works for the PFA, but has over 15 years of coaching experience, from everything from after school clubs to the FA skills program to coaching professionally in the academy, category 1, as well as being a foundation phase lead for a category 1 academy club. And I know I said it last night and I'll say it again, Brent is an absolute legend in this field, in these areas, particularly around those softer skills that we'll unpick tonight. So the outcomes for the workshop: how to connect with your players, how to provide equal opportunities, sharing the plan with players, and then providing effective feedback and celebrating success. The agenda and how we're going to do that. First, we'll look at forming connections and a little bit of attachment theory. Then we'll look at establishing the secure coaching environment and then maintaining it, which will be around social construction theory. So 2 bits of theory, and then we'll follow that up by putting those theories into action. So on to the bit where it went a little bit wrong last night, and hopefully this will all be coming through crystal clear. So why do we create the right environment? Fun makes you motivated, and motivation keeps you interested. We're trying to develop a generation of players that see the game differently, players who are passionate, players who are skillful, and it all starts with the right environment. And as coaches, that is down to you, that is down to us to create that right environment for our players. So on to the theory. Forming connections. As coaches, we recognise the basic need to develop positive relationships with players. The good news is most of us are already doing this really well without being overtly aware of what it is that we're doing and why these things work. We just have a sixth sense for it. So phrases such as relationships, or that coach gets on with players, or is a great communicator, or hard but fair, the players trust them, might all be part of how we describe a coach who is good at this part of their role. And I'm hoping that that sounds familiar to you as coaches. What we hope to do throughout this workshop is try to give you a clear understanding of coaches who form strong connections, and in particular, how they do so. So the theory, and specifically at the start, attachment theory. And this is a long established theory of child development. So the root of attachment theory is the idea that dependent human infants seek the care and protection of adults in order to survive. In the first few months of life, children become bonded with significant adults, usually the parents or guardians. These caregivers are the primary significant adults. They're in that role for that child. The bond is achieved through kind of verbal, so talking and getting used to the parent's voice, non-verbal signals, particularly the face, the eyes, nose, the mouth, the reactions, and all the cooing noises and goo-gooing that we do with babies. When the signals are positive, frequent, consistent, repetitive, and unconditional, children develop a secure attachment with a significant adult. When the signals are negative, confused, inconsistent, absent, insecure attachments are formed. This has a detrimental impact on development, learning, and behavior. So as coaches, straight away, when we hear those three things, that it might impact development, learning, and behavior, the alarm bells should be ringing for us, because our environment should seek to nurture that. So the fundamentals of attachment is personal security, feeling safe with the people around you, particularly the adults. So when we can create that environment, we're guaranteeing that development can proceed for that child. Without the safety, a child's brain will get stuck in a mode of kind of reducing the threats that it sees. They won't always be logical to us with an adult brain. It will do this through variations of fight, flight, or freeze, which you will all have seen when coaching. You'll have had moments where players erupt like a volcano and you think, well, that was only something small, but whoa, the volcano erupts. You'll also have moments where a player removes themselves totally from a situation or freezes and doesn't get involved. Fairly common for us as coaches to see those things. But once safety is assured again, a child is able to start explaining its brain, the child's brain potential again. So if we can find a way to get them re-regulated and get them back to feeling safe and secure, they'll be able to kick on and start learning again. So in practice for us as coaches, we become a secondary significant adult for these children, for these players. For youngsters who have experienced positive attachments in their early years, if we're able to kind of copy the attachments and the behaviors of their parents, if we can replicate a secure environment for them, we can replicate that feeling of personal security. And this can then be easily maintained by us being consistent too, even in tough situations. So what you'll find is that the players are a little bit more robust. And when maybe we're getting beat 5-0 after 10 minutes, or they get hit with a big tackle, we're able to have an environment where they can maintain their personal security. So really vital. But all the research suggests that people with secure attachments are more effective learners. So straight away, again, the light bulb's got to be going off for us as coaches. We want effective learners. It makes our job easier and gives the players that opportunity to develop. They'll also, hopefully, expect positive interactions with others, particular adults and peers, have the confidence to explore and be creative in their play. Again, 2 brilliant bullet points for us as coaches. We want players to try things, try new things, take risks in the final third, do that Cruyff turn out of that tight space. So players that feel secure and have secure attachments to us and the environment they're in are going to do those things. Use empathetic skills in their relationships to get on with others, be able to regulate their emotions, have high self-esteem, committed to learning, and know when they need help. Some of our players, though, may not have had as positive attachment in early life. So now when they feel insecure, they may head to that fight, flight, or freeze. So what are the implications for us as coaches? And this also goes to when we're developing those new connections too, with maybe a new group or a new player coming in. As a coach, if we can offer positive, frequent, consistent, repetitive, and unconditional messages, this will increase the chance of us avoiding what we would call unwanted reactions. So the stuff we spoke about earlier, erupting or fight, flight, freeze. By providing a secure environment where the child can develop, they will then start to hopefully flourish within that. So when we form these connections, we have to say it may be a bit of a rocky road. It won't just be straight and easy. There'll be ups and downs, but we have to remain consistent through the use of what you can see on the screen now. Attachment theory gives us a script for whatever a player can throw at us, both positive and negative. If we are positive, if we are frequent and consistent, repetitive and unconditional, we have the opportunity to keep forming the connection, keep growing the connection, and make that player feel secure with us as a coach and within that environment. So the long-term uses, every time we manage behavior or we coach a player, we are giving attachment signals. When they are positive, frequent, consistent, unconditional and repetitive, we create players who are securely attached to us. And as a consequence, they learn more and are better behaved, which is brilliant, music to our ears. The significance of these connections will grow over time. So this is not a quick fix and we'll do this once and that's it. We have to be consistent and unconditional. It's a long-term process and one in which we as coaches have an advantage over other maybe secondary significant adults such as teachers or others are in their life, that we could be potentially coaching these players for 10, 15 years if you pick them up at 6 and 7s and take them all the way through. So we have the opportunity to really cultivate and grow those attachments over a long period of time. And then finally from me, before I hand over to Brent, when applied within a secure environment, we as coaches have a great chance of creating and maintaining secure attachments. And what Brent's going to cover next is a little bit on social construction theory, which is essentially creating an environment in which the players feel secure. So I'll be handing over to Brent, and what you'll notice now is the video is going to flick and I'm going to be in a different t-shirt and it's going to be nighttime, but hopefully it'll all sync up. A little bit later on, we're going to move on to the social construction, which is all about creating the environment. So I'm going to hand over to Brent now.
No problem. Thanks, Tom. So social construction, I think before I kind of go into the theory, it's something that we all do every day. You do it whether you're at work, at home, even playing sports, even around the kids that you coach. It's simply how you construct what's around you. So in the way you deal with and you behave or you speak to your mum, it might be totally different to how you speak to a work colleague. And that's kind of how the theory kind of comes to life on the football pitch, if you like. So as you can see on the screen, I think I might be a little bit behind, so I'm just checking you've got the same slide as me on the screen. But hopefully, to truly produce skillful players, we have to provide opportunities for players to develop. Is that where we are? Is that what everyone's got?
That is the slide we're on, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so these 3 points are really paramount to that environment, because if you can control the environment, then you can really, really start to develop the players you've got under your care. So by creating a social construction, planning and preparation leads a coach into effective strategies of managing the learning by preventing potential distractions from starting. So you'll know, for example, if you have kids in a line, for example, for too long, they may become quite bored, and that's when they tend to misbehave, let's put it that way. So if something's usually too easy, too hard, that's when, it's the same in the classroom, that's when they tend to misbehave. So by addressing that with your practices and by how you deliver, that will certainly kind of minimize the behavior in the kids and make it a really, really good session so they engage with you all the time. Awareness of these internal factors that are within the coaches control allows the coach to focus their energy on the things they can control rather than being distracted onto the things they cannot. So like we've just referenced, you want to be kind of moving the session on rather than dealing with Johnny's misbehavior, etc. at the back of the line. Social construction gives out powerful messages. When the session is planned and prepared with a clear focus and purpose, then the session itself sends the message. This is important. We value your time, and the learning is what we want. That's what you want to make sure that the kids get from you as well. Arrival activities is a good one. So as you've got there early, you're setting up, you may be rushed from work in some of the environments or some of the facilities that you use. A simple game might be something that you get the boys or girls into to get them playing while you finish setting up. That's another one, in terms of really supporting the players as they arrive and giving you a bit of time to breathe if you have rush there. Players learn most effectively when they play in a secure coaching environment. And I think setting these boundaries, imagine having a box and, a very, very good educator once told me about safety, learning and respect, and trying to keep all your players in this box and understanding what behavior looks like in this box, and actually if they come out of it, having to bring them back in. But the key thing is your behavior as well as a coach as well, because they, players, especially the younger ones, will often mimic kind of what the coach does. So if you say, for example, don't do this, and they do it and then nothing happens, what will tend to happen is other players will see that and go, well, actually nothing happened there. You didn't follow through with kind of what you said or what the boundaries were. A good one, which we'll touch on later, is maybe sometimes a code of conduct that I've used in the past. And actually, rather than doing it myself, getting the players to do it. You may select certain players, sometimes even the players that aren't as engaged as they should be, and maybe get them to think about what does good behavior look like, what should happen if behavior isn't to the standard, and get them to write it out for the team and see what the team believes and thinks about that. Usually what happens with this is they all agree, and obviously the minority are the ones that are probably the ones that it's targeted at, but the majority are like, yeah, that's fine, that's easy. And then get them to kind of agree to that. That's something that has worked in the past. And then a secure environment, like I said, is where you can then really start to get to your coaching. So hopefully you can see the next slide. Is that all right? Is that moved along, Tom?
What have you got on your screen? Sorry,
I've got create trust.
Well done. Where
I've got.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry, I need to. Can somebody just confirm if it's set? You can see establishing a secure coaching environment at the top of your slides, because I'm on it. Yeah. Okay. That's the one. Is that what you've got, Brent?
I don't think I've got that.
Brent, press sync. I think is there a sync with presenter?
Yeah, I've pressed it and then it keeps going back. So it's at 16 at the moment.
Why is it doing that to you?
I have no idea.
Can you click it back one? You should be able to click
it back. I just don't know what everyone else can see.
Okay, I will stay. I will follow you now. I'll change it for everyone else.
So I'm on 15.
Confirm we're on 15, and I'll keep moving it as and when from
Excellent.
now.
I'll have to go next slide to you then. Perfect. All right. So all these things here are the things that kind of some things I've touched on here in terms of creating that trust and securing it. And some of that comes from even as you arrive, and we'll touch on that a little bit more when we go in, how you greet. So that arrival, and like Tom said at the start, a lot of the players will come because they love the game, but a lot of them will come because of how you are with them already. That relationship you've built with them. He's already talked about that secondary kind of attachment, other than the parents as well. So that trust is kind of already there, and that esteem as well. So protecting that, knowing your players is a key one as well. And all these things on the list here, you can see really, you will see as we bring it to life, are things that really support your relationship with the player and that social construction in terms of them. Because the better you can kind of get that relationship with, the more likely they are to stay in that box with you that we mentioned earlier. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that box might have to go around a little bit around that little player, but by getting to know them, hopefully you can coax them back in and understand what is going on outside of football as well, in terms of doing that. Encouraging players to think creatively, should I say? Let's get my words out. Yeah, all these things here are really big for what we want in terms of obviously the next players coming through, outstanding coaches and obviously skillful players. Clear expectations is a big one. And we mentioned that sometimes you can guide that with questioning, and sometimes it just needs to be strict and told, and that will depend on what age groups and what players and how much you know them. If your first session you're getting to know them, a lot of that will kind of depend on where you can go with these things. Simple routines. So I know one of the questions you'll kind of have every time they come to your sessions will be, are we playing a game? Are we playing a game? And you and I both know we're playing a game, we know that. And sometimes it might be good to start with a game. It might be good that they know that game's coming. I don't think it's not a bad thing to have a little bit of randomness in a session, but the routine of, right, this is what's going to happen here. We're going to do some ball each work. We're going to go into this topic, or we're going to have a discussion in this part and then move on. That's not a bad routine to have. And actually, if you think of you know, some of the kids we work with, you know, they are across the spectrum, and that differentiation, there's going to be some players that prefer and kind of need routine in order for them to settle as well. Engaging with learning quickly. So again, trying to get them on side as soon as they get on site, really. And that can just be straight away without a challenge of what today's going to be about, or linking maybe the session back to the game that you've just played or to the game you've got coming up at the weekend. And then collaborative learning. So again, it's sometimes all the answers don't have to come from you as a coach. It's sometimes letting them be free to have group chats, to have discussions, and them understanding and respecting that you trust them to go and do that as well, and have that discussion with each other, and then feed it back in. It gives a really, really big amount of ownership to the players, and that trust really does build when you start to give them those opportunities. Next slide for me, Tom, please. That's all right. No, I'll just click and say next.
You click. I've moved it to 16, but I don't know.
At the same time.
Maybe Giuseppe is in charge. I really don't know that.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so I kind of touched on this already. Like I said, if you're going to create this environment which you have, the box, code of conduct, the rules, etc., you know, some of your clubs will have code of conduct already, which again, the parents, the players will buy into. It's just equally as hard to maintain it and make sure that what you see and how you deal with players, every player, is exactly the same, if you like, in terms of, okay, you've stepped out of the boundaries, but now this is going to be the repercussions, and then you build that trust again and go. Because one of the easiest ways to lose that kind of respect and trust from the players is to not follow through with what you've said. So I won't kind of go too much on that. But the trick is, as a coach, you know, to have a plan, really. What happens if they don't get this right? What happens if this is too hard for them? Even specific people within your group who you know on the night may kick up. What are you going to have ready to kind of go with them in terms of to bring them back on side and bring them back to the session, really? So it's really important. So you have to plan the session, but also kind of have that plan for what you're going to do as well. Next one. Yeah, so as you can see here across the both of them, you've got that kind of celebrate the exceptional, you know, praise the good, notice the normal, respond to the inappropriate, and sanction the unacceptable. So yeah, it's just working up and down this spectrum. And with the players you'll have, there'll be some that you never have to sanction, and you'll know them straight away. They'll just come every session and that's what they get on. And then you'll have players where they're at the other end all the time, and it's just about you having a plan to kind of keep them all involved. Sometimes that's as simple as within a session and saying you're doing 1v1s, pairing up the right players together. So if you play, you know, pair up someone who's, you know, one of the top performers with someone who's not, for both of them, that's going to become pretty boring, pretty, you know, arduous quite quickly. And then you're going to have issues with the rest of the group. So trying to think of how you develop and plan your delivery and think about the individuals within your group really will help you maintain the balance and the behavior within your session and that social construction. Okay, on to the next one. We've got another register here for you, Tom. Another register to the...
Peps, can you move it on one? Sorry. Right, Peps has just informed me that when I was speaking, the slides didn't move. Is that correct? Oh, right. After we finish, you will get the slide deck. I've probably bored you to sleep there for 10 minutes when I've spoken there because there's nothing on the slides. But I was moving the slides and it's not moved on your screen. So you will get all of that. Like I said, it's a nice bullet point and not as dull as it was when I feel bad now because I've just read it to you for 10 minutes. Did not know that's what was happening. But you will definitely get the slides with the content on. So don't worry about that. That's annoying. Okay, so for those of you that have joined us a little bit late, I know I've just let one person in. I can see the register here in front of me, and I know at least 5 of you haven't done this. So can you please just do me a favour, point your phone at the QR code and just fill your name in. If you're on your phone and you can't do that, the link is back in the chat and I'll put it in again. But it just means that can ensure that you get your FA accredited CPD hours, which is really, really important. So thank you very much. Peps, you're going to have to manage this moving forward. So what we're going to be doing now is we've kind of given you a bit of theory around attachment and your connections with the players. We've talked about the environment that you create and some really top points on those bullet points there. And what Brent's going to do now is kind of try and put that theory into action a little bit. So we're going to be moving on. Peps, you're in charge. Brent, if you just be explicitly clear when you want him to click the slide on.
Yeah, no problem. So I think, yeah, so I've got putting theory into action on here. So we're going to see like a series of videos really, and we're going to go back to what Tom said at the start about the agenda, about certain things as well. So what I'll try to do is kind of give you a bit more of a background in terms of kind of my thoughts and why I did what I did with some of these videos, really. And, you know, hopefully if you get just a couple of nuggets from it on things, you may see things that you already do, which is, you know, which is fantastic. And I'm not the all-knowing oracle here, you know, I'm just someone who kind of probably is more biased, and I know it, towards social and psych of the kind of the long-term player development kind of four corner model. So I know that. So yeah, perhaps if you want to go to the next one. So connecting with players. So I know, so this is something that I certainly do with players, you know, is that greeting, and I tend to have my own greeting. It's personal to me. So when they come, it was usually like a high five and a fist bump. That was it. So any player at Derby, it doesn't matter how age, under 14, under 9, if they've had me, if they've met me, that's how I greet them, and they know that. And that was my way of connecting kind of with them, for sure. And you can even see years, you know, it might go a couple of years where I haven't seen a player, but they come, you'll pass them in the corridor and it'll be like, oh, hi, Brent, how are you doing? And that would be always it. And that was always my way of connecting with them. You may have other different ways. It, like we said earlier, it might just be just a handshake. It might be, it's just noticing that they arrive. That's one of the first things to definitely support you. As you said on here, like positive body language, knowing names is a good one as well, especially if you have new players coming into your teams. And, you know, obviously at Derby, we used to have, you know, trialists come in, and that's massive for them. You know, it's already daunting enough for them to come into that environment, and always make a point to go and meet them and their parents, to say hi, you know, get to know some stuff about them as well. So we'll move on to the second one, knowing about your players. So, sorry, if you could just go back, Peps, for a sec. That's it. So knowing about your players. So 3 things about them. I know we did things where we got snapshots of all the players, and, you know, this, don't get me wrong, at Derby, obviously this is very different with the resources we have, but we sent out a kind of a template around them, knowing things like where they're from, their date of birth, you know, what quarter they're in, they're born, what football team they support, what their best memory of football is, those kinds of things, simple things. I think I would always look at these things the same way I'd look at meeting people at work. You know, yes, you can go to meetings and meet people, but knowing just a few things about them, even its siblings. So when they come, you can say, oh, how are you doing? Oh, you had a, you know, a volleyball tournament last week. How did that go? You know, that these are different ways for you to connect. And from their point of view, I believe it shows that you really care, that you notice and you remember stuff about them as well. And lastly, establishing clear boundaries, you know, so we've talked about the SLR, you know, what is fine, you know, it's fine for us as coaches to make mistakes as well. So although we've talked about SLR, safety, learning, respect, and some of your players being outside the box, it's all right for you to show them that you make mistakes as well. So whether it is a session or forgetting to do something, or not forgetting the score, or forgetting to time something, showing that you're vulnerable as well does really help bridge that gap with the players as well. Because if we're expecting players to not be perfect, you know, not have the fear of failure, then again, it's the same. If they see you as the all perfect coach all the time, it's like, oh, I've got to be at their standards. That's not how it goes. So sometimes it's nice, you know, don't feel that you have to know it all, show it all to parents and players. So, do you know what? I made a mistake there, and that happens, and just own it, really.
Brent, can I just come in there? I just want to really emphasize when Brent said snapshots, because he's taking it for granted that we kind of knew what he meant, but all it is a slide with the kid's face in the middle and then some key facts about them. And I can't tell you how much that helped me with the new group last year. And I know you know your groups generally, but for those of you that have new players or may be dropping onto new teams, those snapshots are vital, because you got mum and dad's name on them, for example, pet's name, team that they support, so you can give them a bit of stick at the weekend if their team win or lose. But they're those little connections that we're speaking about, that bind you to each other, and they start to feel a little bit more comfortable with you. So I really would recommend that, because they were game changing for me last year, and I am still using the ones from last year for this year, with the new set of players too, because it helps me. So I really would recommend that. Really good.
Excellent. Next slide for us. So sharing the plan with the players, you know, I found this one excellent, really, in terms of how I know when I learned this, and I'm sure because she's from, she does work in this county, Sally Needham is a big influence on me when I had one age group. It was a particularly difficult age group, and I think she gave me this idea into the sharing the plan of what you're going to do. You know, like we've said, they all come, they're going to ask you, are we playing a game? What we're doing tonight? What we're doing tonight? And actually, you know, depending on the facilities you've got, whether it's a whiteboard, whether it's a changing room, whether you can send things through beforehand to parents on WhatsApp or whatever, letting the players kind of understand and know what's coming can really help and prepare some of the players, some of the individuals in there, knowing that it's finishing tonight and what's going to be kind of planned in. It can kind of get their mind right rather than going in blind. It also then takes it away from you in terms of having to answer all those questions as well when you're trying to set up. You've just rushed from work to set up. So that was a really big thing from my point of view. Planning roles for individuals. So again, sometimes in your sessions you might plan for certain players to do certain things or to play certain roles in there, and actually by having the plan, and I tended to put it on the board in the changing room at Derby, so that when they came in, you had the plan, they had the session, they knew how the routine would go. Focus players, so players we were going to work around, would be on there with an asterisk next to them, their initial, and then it's a good chance for them to discuss what's on the board themselves without me, but then have a chat with the individuals and what I was probably looking for them tonight. In some instances, what I did was explain the games to one individual. So if, say, it's someone I wanted them to build their confidence and get them to speak a little bit more, I'd explain the session to them, and then check that they understood it, and actually said, you know, would you mind explaining that to the group later? Yeah, no worries. And then actually, when you go into that next bit, when you go from one part of the session to the next, actually, little Max is going to tell you the next part, and then that's a little bit more ownership of him explaining it. And it might not be in polished coach's words like an adult's words, but he will get it across in his own kind of childlike way to his teammates as well. So that's another kind of way to give ownership, but also get the plan over as well. And then at the bottom there, link back to the previous game. So again, sharing the plan. So it might be you link back to the game that you've just had at the weekend and say, look, you know, this is what happened at the weekend. If they were there, it brings it a bit to life as to why you're doing what you're doing. Or similarly, you can kind of go towards the week coming up as well. So this is coming up, this is what we're going to work on. And that can be things you did really well, or things that you want to improve on as a group or individually within that. Next one for us, please, Pat. So hopefully you'll see a video now of me sharing the plan with the players.
The important thing is what you can hear.
What we're going to play is
Videos might not be
game
good.
that I've named Activate. Okay, so it's very.
Hold on. Peps, we need to turn our mics off.
So as you've seen that clip, it's a good way of sharing everything with you. And like, you know, I mean, if I take myself, for example, I'm better at seeing practices work moving than someone giving me a session plan. That's just how I am. I can see session plans and I can work off them, but I'm better seeing it in the way that some of your players, and you'll find they don't get it straight away, and sometimes they need to get in it and involved in it before they get it. That's just another way of kind of using that tactics board or the whiteboard to show, right, this is what the pitch looks like behind me. These are little areas, because everyone will learn in slightly different ways. So by giving them that first little kind of snippet of information about what the plan is, there's the area size, that's what you're trying to do. It gives them all a kind of a nice time to kind of take the information in, but also ask questions. And good, so you see, there's a lad there ready to ask questions straight away, and he might be asking a question that someone else is thinking as well. So it's just a nice lead into the session at the start. Like I said, sometimes we did it where the session was on there and I might not say anything and leave it there and go through it on the pitch. Sometimes I might go through it on the night. It depends on what the session was and how complicated it might be for them, and what I wanted to get out, what the returns I wanted to get from the group or individuals within there. There were some times as well where I wouldn't tell them the topic. You'd go, here's the session, and actually the challenge would be for them to work out what we were trying to get out of them, if you like, as well.
Brent, can I just pick up a couple of bits on that? I just made a few notes. Just, is there any particular reason, or I'll rephrase the question. You were at player level, you were sat down with them. Was there any theory behind that, or?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's getting down to their level, isn't it? It's being with them and making it feel like we're together rather than me stood up looking down on them. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for that. You want to get in and out. But at the start, it's quite relaxed, a good environment. They want them to feel safe, feel that they can ask questions. And yeah, if they didn't get it, then that's the right time to be saying something there as well. So that's potentially what, that's why I was down there at that level.
Okay, sure. And then just one other bit, and you sort of answered it because you mentioned that sometimes you would almost set them off without the clues and stuff. But what do you think are the main benefits to? So there, you were really big on hide, reveal. What's the other one? Brain's gone.
Maneuver
one.
Yeah.
But so, what do you think the advantages are at times for giving them maybe what we would consider as coaches the knowledge that we maybe want to sprinkle in? You've given it up front. What would you kind of say the benefits are of doing that?
So the benefits of there is that they know what they're going to do, or know what we want from them there, or what they're looking to get out of that session. The benefits, the other way, the flip of not doing that is then it's more creative then. So you get more problem solving. They know the basis of a game, but they don't know necessarily why. But then if you start to question and just probe them in the right direction, they'll likely give you the answers. And if they can't verbalize the answers, they'll show you the answers anyway, and probably might even sometimes not even realize it. And that's the creativity and freedom that hopefully you'll get from the players.
Nice. Okay.
No problem. So moving on to providing equal opportunities. So simpler here. Yeah, being inclusive, creating a positive experience for all the players. Goalkeepers is always a big one. I know, especially grassroots as well. If it's just you, what do you do? How do you get the goalkeepers included? But as you can see, I'm sure everyone now has a team and watches, especially at the top end of the game. The goalies are playing more now with their feet, so they're basically outfielders that can use their hands. So, using them as set players, as bounce players at the end of a grid. Even if you're doing driven passes, you could loft them into the air and get them to catch it. So you're driving it into the keeper's hands. So again, they're getting their handling while the players are getting their technique. So there's loads of ways of incorporating and making sure that everyone is involved, and also everyone gets an opportunity to practice what it is. If it's finishing week, I'm pretty sure everyone wants to score goals, and it's making sure that you're keeping an eye that everyone's getting a go at the topic. Turing feedback is given to every player. So again, this is just something to think about. When you leave a session, did you speak to every player? Did you give feedback to every player? When you leave, and whether it's whether you have got 10 players, 15 players. Making that hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever you've got, is making sure actually at some point across an evening at training or during a game is that everyone gets something from you. He's getting that positive reinforcement of something. And it might be an area to improve, but if you can phrase it, it might be, you know, I like what you did here. See if you can try and do that. And that doesn't sound negative, but it is me trying to get someone to improve on something. And it's just having that interaction with every player and not just necessarily the top performers and the ones that get your attention for negative behavior. There's a big group in the middle that can kind of get lost, really, sometimes in the group. So it's just making sure that you get around everyone, really. And then demonstrations in the group. So making sure it's not always the same players that are demonstrating, or, you know, if you've got them to break out into group discussions, it's not always the same voices that are coming. Like I said, you know, with the example earlier of the play in the change room, I knew he's a quiet one and probably wouldn't put his hand up in a group. But actually, if I explain the game to him and he's the one explaining, he's developing his confidence in speaking within a group setting. So yeah, making sure everyone's in and around and you're sharing the load around the group as well. Next one for me, Pat. So yeah, so in this kind of video, what you'll see is me use one for players in terms of a demonstration as well.
To hide the ball. So if you
So as you can see there in that video, use someone, but I've also given feedback to him as well, because I've used him in terms of what he's done, but also referenced to him doing it within the game as well. So I've kind of done two things in one: use him as a demo, but also actually fed back to him. So I fed back and told him that was brilliant, and actually shown the group as well. And we'll come on to kind of feedback, you know, later in terms of how, when to do it, in terms of that. In terms of the next one, so encouraging creativity. What's things in my way here? And freedom. Questioning, challenging players. So rather than instructing, and, you know, it depends on what the topic is, obviously, on how you word it, but your words really have a big impact. So trying to do this, you know, trying to do that. So in this game, I said, can you try and go through these boxes? So if they just played the game and didn't go through the boxes, that was fine. It's still a normal game. Let's just jump back again. Are we playing the video again? Sorry. No problem. Yeah, so in this game, I said to him, try. So if they just played normally and didn't go through and scored, then that's fine. But obviously, just even that word try and the little kind of reward of double points starts to get them to be creative and actually try and do the top level. And it's the same with like video games. They all want to do the tough level. They want to do it and they'll keep going and keep going. And that's the same way. So just sometimes by that questioning and challenging the players rather than that command style all the time, just gives them that little bit of creativity to kind of work things out for themselves. In terms of giving ownership to the players, kind of already talked about that a little bit, but arrival activities are good. So can players progress the practice more in sessions that you build? So if you've planned a session and you know where you want to go, it might be, rather than telling them, right, next we're going to, I don't know, score with one touch only, it might be that you go to a player, how can we make this difficult? You know, if I'm going to give you double points, but what should I give you double points for? They might come up with that themselves, go, actually, if we score in one touch, then maybe we should get that. And then go, that's a great idea. That is fantastic. So it makes them, even though you've kind of gone around and kind of pushed them into it, they believe, so the individual believes it's their idea, and the group see that you're willing to kind of take on the opinions and of the players as well, to kind of let them lead where the game goes as well. And you noticing as well, if things need to be slightly easier for someone else, again, it doesn't always have to go up and up and up and progress. Sometimes in some sessions you do have to regress them back. It might be the same thing, you have the same conversation with a group or individuals within that group. Another one for creativity is allowing the players time to solve the problems. and actually observe, take your time back to observe and watch what happens and pick your moments to really get involved, really. So if you want to go to the next one, please, Pat. Hopefully this one plays.
Oh, that's it.
Can you pass it through a ball?
You can pass it, but you have to dribble through to activate the goal.
Sorry, Brent, I had to mute you there.
Oh, no worries. No problem. So yeah, so in that one, you'll notice that I didn't say a lot to begin with because I'm just watching and letting them work it out. Because every time I say something, potentially they're listening to me, and sometimes they're not. And I know you'll know this when you're saying things during games as well. And actually, is that the best time to be saying something sometimes? And some players will be better than others at it. But by just noticing and just giving little bits in there, that sometimes really helps. So again, the prompt in there was, well done, you've done it. So you can now, you've been activated, you can now get double goals once the blue team had got in. Was just a little prompt, but it wasn't go and score. It was, you've done it now. But if they want to keep the ball, then that's fine, and work a better angle to score, then that's totally up to them. And then obviously just with the goal and just praising them at the end, like well done for doing that, then that's just somewhere to get in and just reinforce kind of what the topic was, really.
I think, Brent, on that, I think like, as an outsider looking in, it was quite surprising maybe that how quiet you were. But actually, when we're talking about encouraging creativity and that environment for them to go and explore and take risk and not worry about it, yeah. You helped them, you nudged them with the rules a few times because they were new to the game, and you praised the goal, and that was it. And I think that's a really important tool as a coach, to be able, like Brent said, to step back and observe and give them chance to really explore it, instead of what we would call commentating as coaches. By commentating, we're almost chasing the ball around the field, pass it, dribble it, protect the ball, that type of stuff. Commentating over it actually begins to reduce the decisions the players make. So I think you make a really valid point, and the footage is really important, because all Brent does is help them with the rules a couple of times and praise the stuff he wants to see. And you might sometimes think as a coach, I've got to be busy, I've got to be heard, I've got to be seen.
Yeah, I do understand that, because again, sometimes you've got your parents there, and I get it, I've been there as well, and the parents don't hear you saying anything and think you should be on them all the time, and you're conscious about what they're seeing, but actually it's the players that need you. And ultimately, I have a look at it this way: if I tell them everything to do, what are they going to do when I'm not there? You know, you want them to work it out for themselves, and then it's that praise, it's that specific feedback, and well done for recognizing where the pressure comes from, or well done for turning away from danger, and then that specific feedback to them. But like I said, if they're playing in the game, they're fully immersed in it, you've got to pick the right times sometimes to say something, and sometimes it's not even at the right time, which we'll kind of come on to here as well. So in terms of effective feedback, being specific, I've just mentioned there. So what have they done? So if I say well done, that's great, and they'll love that. But what they want that again? They want that well done again, but they don't know what it is they've got to do to get that well done again. So by being specific about what they have done well, that will then kind of give them reinforcement to kind of go, right, okay, I'm going to go and get it again. I'm going to go and make that tackle again, and then get that praise again from them. In terms of the language, I've said here, consider the language that you're using. And it kind of goes back to thinking about the player. And if we go back to knowing your players as much as you can about them, I'm sure in all your groups will know who you can speak to in certain ways. Like we said at the start, how you speak to your mum or how you speak to a colleague at work are different. And that's the same with your players in your team. There's some that you might, say, can you not do that anymore? And they'll burst into tears, where someone else won't. It'll just be, yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, and move on. And it's just considering the language and how you approach them in terms of motivating them and engaging with them in terms of the feedback. And then thinking about the timing of providing feedback. So again, sometimes it's not during the game, sometimes it might be after. Is it going to be public so everyone can hear, like, well done, Johnny, that was a brilliant pass? Or is it going to be private, you know, as you're just walking off the pitch with the group and just going, Johnny, I love that pass that you played at the start of the game. That set us up really well. And it's just getting that balance between the two, really, in terms of providing that feedback. And like I said, and you'll see in the next clip about the timing as well, it doesn't always have to affect everyone. If you want to go to the next video, please, Pat.
In there. So have a think, when they're getting the ball, especially when the keeper, rather than standing next to him, can you
You muted again, Brent. Sorry, I had to mute you.
No problem, thank you. So with that one, I remember obviously that session, and she was someone in the group who was pretty low on confidence. I think if you'd have seen the whole session, you'd have seen she wasn't as involved as everyone else. She wasn't as robust as physical as everyone else. So therefore she was on the periphery of it. So I had a bit more of a conversation with her more than anyone else, noticing about her involvement and giving her some tips really on how to get on the ball a bit more, which, as you can see from the video, she kind of took on board. And actually we started to have a conversation where she started to give me the answers and she started to get involved more as well. So that's a kind of a perfect kind of example of someone who was on the periphery, probably someone who's not going to dominate that session, but getting them involved and keeping them into the session and differentiating the abilities within a group as well. But also the feedback and timing didn't affect the rest of the group. So while I spoke to her, the rest of the group's playing. So in terms of my ball rolling time, that's not stopped. I've not stopped the group to speak to her. Everyone's playing. She's getting coached. She's getting some information from me. She's getting feedback. Everyone else is playing the game still. So ball rolling time is continuing as well. So it's picking the right time.
But I think that is an excellent example of forming connections with players that's been kept private, firstly, and knowing your players. If Brent had chosen to shout that on and say, hey, next time, open up so you can get the ball off the goalie, think about how that may have affected that player in that moment. Instead, it was very personal, very private, on the level, eye contact. And if you listen to the tones of Brent's voice, his voice was different for that moment because it was a personal, up close, and all of that aside, the player felt valued. They got valuable information specific to them. So when we talked about earlier, every time you coach, every time you manage behavior, you're sending back and forth connections. That's a perfect example where a player will really feel the love to go, you really respect me, care about my development. I think that is a fantastic example of how to support someone and provide that feedback in a way that also develops those connections. I've just thought as a clip, for me, it doesn't get much better than that for us as coaches. Everyone else has carried on. Like Brent said, game's carrying on at its intensity. That player felt really valued. So I just think that's a great example to finish that kind of part of the presentation on. Brent, have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm really just keen to see what the people obviously on the call would like to say, if there's any questions, because I'm conscious that I'm coming from loads of different experiences that I've had, etc. And actually, I'm sure the people on the call have got loads of kind of examples of or questions that they want to kind of come out with.
I've got a couple for you. I just want to do a couple of bits of housekeeping. Peps, can you just press skip, move on one slide, please? Right. I've said this twice. I told you you'd get it loads today. There are still 5 of you that haven't done this. So I know some of you may be on your phone and you're going to do it after, but please ensure that you've scanned the QR code and signed the register so I can get you logged accredited hours against your fan number, which is good for you if you want to do C's and B's moving forward. So please do make sure you've completed that. And I think I just want to wrap it before we go into the questions. The second half where Brent's been presenting there, hopefully that got you thinking back to the stuff we did at the start and forming those connections and creating that environment for our players to thrive. Ultimately, this will greet them at the gate, and I've been told off for this many times because sometimes I can't quite control my face. Greet with a smile, make eye contact, make them feel welcome, and have that personal conversation with them about something you know is important to them. I won't say the name, but on one of the snapshots last year, I don't know why, but they put that they liked horse racing and they didn't, and I don't know why they did that. So then it became a running joke each week to ask the player about the racing at the weekend as a bit of a connection, a formal connection. But that ultimately is the gateway to everything that we've spoken about today. Your coaching behaviors, your demeanor, and the way that you react to some of the situations that have been raised today in the second half, and some of the bits that were raised around the theory at the start, is just so powerful. And hopefully we've kind of unpicked and given you some insight into some of those areas. I want to apologize again for the start. Was it just the register QR code on the whole time I was talking? Because I just feel terrible. But what I'll do is I'll actually re-record and I'll present it again with the slides. So when you get the meeting link, the recording link, if you do want to watch it again, I will re-record it with me presenting with the slides actually moving. So you've got something to reference on screen. But like I said, you will get the slide deck after this. And I'd also like to give Brent props there. Firstly, a huge thank you for coming on. And secondly, for the first time ever, a Sheffield and Hampshire County FA meeting finished on time. In terms of the content, so I'm thrilled. So Brent, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So first and foremost, I think they're actually both from Riley. I find sometimes that practices that I've planned totally bomb. We've been there. Don't worry about it as a coach. It happens because some of the girls under 12s just don't get what they're meant to do. So they end up being slow, and it defeats the objective of the practice, which is often quick combination play. I'm trying to introduce more complex practices to provide game realism. Lots to think about at the same time is what Riley's after. I've tried demonstrating verbal explanation and using a whiteboard to show how the practice should work, but I still have a few who really struggle to grasp the patterns. Do you have any suggestions for how I could explain or demonstrate better?
Well, sorry, what age was that again?
12 girls.
Under 12 girls. I would say, I mean, I know you've mentioned, I heard the word complex in there, and ultimately what I would do is try and simplify, try and go back a step and just go back to what the game is really and what do they need. Yeah, I get this because obviously I know in terms of how much I've coached, yes, you can have a session that looks really good, but ultimately it's got to be about what they need in there really. Even if it means as well in the group, splitting the group. And I don't know, obviously, if there's you or as an assistant coach and working off someone else, but if you're looking for quick passes and combinations and you've got groups or players at different ages, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a couple of groups there. And it's not A and B thing. It's just well, actually, you're going to get more success in here by doing it in, I don't know, 2v2, 3v3 in here, 3v3 in here separate, and then you start to build up. So then these two practices, you still plan them the same, but this group might get to the next progression before this group, and they're still working towards the same thing, really. So that's kind of one idea that kind of jumps out at me straight away. But yeah, what I would do is just try and simplify and don't worry about it being complex.
I also think, because I was there last night, Riley, the exact same thing. We as coaches got it wrong. So I'm not saying you are, but we got it wrong at this particular moment. And again, when we go back to the stuff we've spoken about today, was I being all of the stuff we said earlier around, was I being positive throughout? Maybe was my face staying as it normally is when I'm in the great spirits with the lads, or was it a little bit and then players start to pick up on my insecurity about, oh God, this isn't going well. So there's also that side of it as well, where do you remain consistent when it's going well and when it's going bad? And again, that's not to say you don't, but that's just something to consider for us as coaches. When it goes worse, do we start to change? So I sometimes, it will be my face that's a tell, and I will also probably become louder, and I'll probably, whereas focusing, trying, like Brent said earlier, some targets, some positive, and maybe some nudges, I will probably focus more on a few negatives. That's what happens to me as a coach, and I have to work on that every week, every month, to not do that. But those little cues will filter into your players, and if they can sense that you've maybe not given up, or you're frustrated with it, they might go the other way with it and go, do you know what? I'm not doing it. But that's not to say you're doing that, but that's just something that I know I've done and it's happened to me, and it kind of fits with what you described there.
Yeah, for sure. I think regulation's a good one in terms of we're adults and being able to regulate ourselves when we know we've made mistakes or something's happened on the pitch. I think I'm trying to think of, it was Merv who said, live the behaviours you want to see. And that's basically what this is. So if I start having a go at the ref, then is it a surprise if my players start having a go at the ref as under 12s or under 10s or 14s or whatever? And that's not right at any level of the game. So you've got to kind of set the standard really in terms of that. But that regulation, but especially working with young kids who won't have got to that level of developing or regulating themselves. And within those groups, you're going to have players that are really good at it and aren't so good at it. So yeah, live the behaviour you want to see. So if you want players to have good behaviour, then I suppose as coaches we need to model it as well.
Okay, I've got another question. It's from Riley again. It's just around an injured player, and we've actually had this over the last 12 months in our context. An injured player that can't train or play at the moment, totally non-contact. How can we keep them in our environment? How can we keep them involved?
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we've had a couple of those. I think one, obviously in our environment at Derby is slightly different, but keeping in touch with them for starters. You know, all the things that everyone else got, they still get. Contact, making sure they're all right, but also getting them around. So depending on travel, don't get me wrong, travel time, etc., with the parents and other siblings, we would always invite them in. Like, come in. We've got a tournament this weekend. We've got this in. Come in. You can take score. You can do the team talk and have discussion. Because even though they're not playing, they've still got an opinion on the game. They can still see things, and actually, it might help them when they go back into playing that they've seen the game from the side, from the coach's point of view as well. Depending on the age, I'm not sure if the age is it the same age. It's under 12. Is it the same? So again, making them feel part of the group still. So it's not the case of she's just not there for a month or two and then has to come back, because then that, in this day and age, could provide anxiety in itself of having to come back into that group, having not been there. So yes, remaining in contact, getting them around. There's loads of jobs, loads of tasks you can ask them. It might even be ask them, like, what would you like to do? You know, you're in around the group. What would you like to do today? There could even be another coach that could support you with, you know, the balls, bibs, and the cones, and even ideas for the session. You know, I'm thinking of doing this tonight, but you know, what do you think could make it more difficult? Again, you probably know the answer, but you're making it as if that they're coming up with the answer. So you're really getting them on board.
Okay, good stuff. I think, there is another one. It can't be Riley. It is Riley again. He's in.
Go on, Riley.
We've got a hand up, so I'm just going to have a quick... Dom, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, and I'll read through Riley's first?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's just a question. It might just be a reflection of the age group that I coach like under 6, under 7s, and I kind of guess work really hard on creating those bonds with players and stuff like that. But then, so I'm doing that early in the session, then it comes to start the session, and there's like I kind of have to flip into like, right, this is what we're doing, explaining it to them, but that kind of camaraderie or jovialness is still there with the kids, and they start to mess about, and it's very hard to pull that back in without going into a bit of like, right, I'm talking, you've got to listen. And you talked earlier on about boundaries. Like, I'm very wary of like saying, of like, you know, like punishing a kid or saying you have to sit out because you're not listening or what X, Y, and Z. And I know you wouldn't do that straight off, but I guess, do you have any examples of how you might control that, and maybe some techniques that, or like things that you say, like if you go outstep this boundary, this is the not punishment but consequence.
Yeah, and that's it. It's all about consequences. If you're going to do that, then that's it. And like I said, it's always, if you endanger my safety, the player's learning or respect, then there will be a consequence to that. What I tended to do, like you, I've done it. I've been there and I've sat kids out, said you'll be out for a minute, and that's it. And I've done it that way and said, look, if you're out for a minute, and if it's a repeat offender, I've gone, look, if way back when I was younger, it would double every time, and ultimately some would get the message and work, but that doesn't work for everyone, and there's not one fits all, if you like. I think always think about how you're engaging with them as well. So I would always think, well, what am I doing? Is it their fault? Is it mine? I always think, right, what am I doing? And is it the amount of time I'm speaking to them? Is it too long? Especially 6 and 7s, you think about the attention span, probably not going to be long. Is it the practice? Are they involved in the practice? Is it a ball each or ball between two? If it's anything, probably less than that. Then again, how involved are they? But the boundaries, I suppose, with them, they're a bit younger to be kind of going, right, let's get them to do it. But with some cleverly put questions, you can kind of ultimately get your own little like 3-pronged kind of code of conduct. So what do we think good behavior is? Listening. They'll know it all from the teacher from school, listening to the coach, respecting everyone. You might even go, safety, learning, respect. They're a little bit young, and then just simply ask, okay, well, if we don't do these things, what do you think should happen? And see, and obviously you don't want them getting sent home or anything like that, etc. But it might be just an idea to kind of think, okay, well, maybe the consequences could come from them, or you have something in your pocket to kind of go, well, if we do that, then this is going to happen, etc. And then see. And that's tended to work for me in the past. But like I said, everyone's different, every group's different, and you have to manage different personalities. There's a different world now from when I started coaching as well. Yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit there.
Can I just come in as well, Brent? Because before we did this, I had to scan through some of my notes from a course I was on, just regarding how we might reframe that. And I may have missed it when I was just reading there, but if that's a consistent thing that they'll maybe be with you, and then the behavior starts, maybe try and focus on the positive behaviors and really notice and shine a spotlight on it. So if you've got 3 that are angels, every time they do something, but almost try to ignore some of the low level stuff that Brent said there about, if it's not impacting others' learning, safety or respect, I'm going to really try to ignore it. But every time Timmy, Janie and Brent do even the most anything that's positive, I'm going to be on it. Oh, thank you very much for giving me that code. Your listening has been excellent today. Well done for getting straight on with that activity. I love to see it. High five. And maybe try and get them to go with that approach where they start to get a bit jealous, or they start to copycat the behaviors that's getting praised. But it is tough, because you do have to ignore some stuff that you want to say something, but it's maybe worth a try if that is something that's quite consistent, and maybe try and drag them out of that with copycatting positive behaviors that you want to see. As an additional solution to that problem, if that makes sense.
I think one of the videos, I think it was like that. The second video, I think, when I'm speaking that you saw tonight, there's one of the players at the back doing kick-ups. So again, just ignore him and carry on. And that's when I did the demonstration with a lad and said, well done, you did that really well over there. So yeah, it's that positive reinforcement, really.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Dom. So there was another question from Riley. It's actually a really good question. Where's the start of it? There it is. What's the single best idea you've ever had for creating a connection with players? I'm going to give you mine. Maybe doesn't fit perfectly in this. I've stopped saying, don't be last. And now I say, first in, 2 words, first in, and the first 3 people get a fist bump, and you would not believe I've got black toenails from my toasted on, bruised knuckles. But that one, someone said it, and I went, I thought that's rubbish. That's not a thing. And I tried it, and the engagement and the attachment and the banter it causes has been, for 2 words, I can't believe the difference it makes to them. But I think, less tongue-in-cheek on that one, the biggest change, the biggest impact I've had is by explaining to my players what we will be doing at the start of the session, or if you've got access to the clubhouse or your changing room, having that up. I just think it bonds them to the session. It stops the questions. They can start to focus on what they want, and you can talk to them about other things as well in that time. So I think for me, that bit at the start of the session where we are demonstrating that we value your time, we value your learning, this is what we're doing, bang, straight away. And I think arrival activities are crucial to that as well, about creating that connection, because you could go and have a little play with them and have a laugh as well. They're just 3 that spring to mind. I don't know, Brent, if you've got any that you'd like to add.
I think one that I really enjoy is that it's a greeting. And I'm sure there's YouTube videos of school teachers in, I think it's America somewhere, where she has a different greeting for each individual child in the class of like 30. And you're thinking that's unbelievable for her to remember. But then that the stuff, how they then feel then, knowing that they've got that connection with the teacher in a way that the others don't, is really impactful. So I really like that. I've always done that. Depending on the age, of course, I can't go to like an under 16 and start doing that I've never met before. But anywhere like foundation age, you know, everyone loves a fist bump, a high five, and just by having that own little personal greeting, I think that was good into the connecting. The other one is just knowing them, is knowing stuff. Take football away, knowing other stuff about them, knowing that they go horse riding, or that their sister goes horse riding, or that their aunt is from Spain, or they've been on holiday and they go on holiday here every year. Those little things that have nothing sometimes to do with football, they are probably the biggest impact that I think I have with the players. So when I can speak with them and talk to them about that, I think then they have more buy-in with what I want to do, and then respect me a bit more with when I'm asking them to do something or not do something as well. That's what I find for me going forward, is just knowing them. It's hard to juggle and remember, but we do it when we go into meetings, whether it's football, whether it's work meetings. You meet people all the time, but if you meet a person out, and then what do you remember about them after a conversation, to then see them again and go, how did that marathon go that you were training for? How is your, you know, your daughter, remembering names and ages, those little things. I think that works not even just with children. I think that works with people. I would try and do that with anyone I met, let alone a group of players.
Awesome. Okay, right. I'm just going to wrap through the last couple of slides. So Pep's just put it on the screen. I was going to mention these face-to-face events that we do have coming up. I know some of you have signed up. They are now all fully booked. We will have a winter series of 3 more face-to-face ones. If you'd like adding to the waiting list, just drop me a message and I'll add you on. We generally get at least 20% of people pulling out between me sending the confirmation email and the event. So it's likely that we will get spaces available. What we are doing this year, if you haven't already seen this at the coaches' conferences, you'll notice that the second and the third event have the same title, but the focus on the age group of players is different, so you can pick and choose what works for you. Peps, just skip me on one more, please, fella. We do have a number of these online workshops coming up. So like we said earlier, we've got coaches as an effective team, which you might think that's a bit of a weird one, but we're going to unpick how we can work as 2s and 3s to really get the best out of our sessions and make the biggest impact. Tactics on a match day, planning for the individual within a group, which will be really, really good insight, because it's something that just was not on my radar 2 years ago. And now it's something that I had to deliver a session on Tuesday, and I was observed purely on that. And then coaching in the social corner. That's what we've got in the diary up to now. One more slide for me, Peps. So again, I'd just like to say a massive thank you for coming tonight and giving up your time. I know we said 7 till 8. We thought the questions might take us over, which I've got no problem with. You've stayed because you were interested in the questions. So thank you for coming. A huge thank you for Brent for giving up his time and sharing some really good practice. As I said in the chat, I will send you the link to the session that we took the snapshots from. You will get the slide deck. Apologies once more for the issues we had at the start, because I was having internet issues. Peps has then took over control to manage it, and I honestly thought you could all see what I was doing, so I'm absolutely mortified. So I will re-record that and send it to you. One last thing, there will be a feedback link. This is the first time we've done this, as I said, in nearly 3 years. We deliberately didn't have like breakout rooms, or where we had moments where we were saying, have a think, and sort of, then we want you to unmute yourself and answer questions. We are interested in if that has worked, because we want these to work for you. So there will be a feedback form. It'll take you less than 2 minutes. So we'll be really interested if the structure's worked for you, or if you'd like us to make it more interactive. That'll be the crux of it. So we make these as valuable for you as possible. But again, thank you very much. Hopefully that was valuable. Any questions at all around the topics, please do send me an email. I know a load of you, or not a load, but some of you do send me session stuff. I'm more than happy when I get a moment to take a look at stuff for you. So thank you again, and we'll see you hopefully either on Monday or the following Monday at some face-to-face stuff, or at the next online one. You're all free to leave.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Take care and good luck this weekend.
Thank you for watching. If you are interested in any of our upcoming Sheffield and Hampshire County FA coach support events, please visit the coach support page at sheffieldfa.com. Thank you.